r/AskReddit. Bill Gates said, "I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it." What's a real-life example of this? I was working as a stockboy in a supermarket, and when we had to fill the milk cooler, people would bust open a 12-pack of milk cartons and put them in one by one. On my first day, I just placed the 12-pack in the cooler and cut the plastic off on one side with my box cutter and yanked it from under it, and the look of the store manager and the other employee who was training me was pure bewilderment. From that day, everyone did it my way. Start of lockdown, my 9-year-old son was having worksheets emailed to complete at home. One day, left him at the laptop doing his maths while I made some dinner with my 3-year-old daughter. Walked into the living room with his dinner to find him asking the Alexa all of his maths questions. I wouldn't call that lazy so much as an intelligent use of the technology at hand. Learning and utilizing technology is probably a much better lesson learned than whatever the particular maths problems he was working on. I take your point, but he was actually doing it in the least efficient way possible. He memorized the equation he needed to ask, say 327 times 8, walked over to Alexa, asked her the equation, walked back to the laptop, walked back to Alexa to ask her again because he'd forgotten the last 2 digits, walked back to the laptop, entered the answer, walked back to Alexa to check it again. He had to keep walking backwards and forwards because he knew it was cheating, so he'd turned the volume down so I wouldn't hear from the next room. So while he thought he was being clever, he was actually taking more time to figure the answer out using the Alexa than it would have taken to do it himself. Plus, of course, there's the fact he was working on a laptop that has a calculator, and a Cortana assistant that does the exact same as Alexa, and he knows how to use both the calculator and Cortana but still chose to cheat in the least efficient way possible. Worked as a laborer at a nursery one summer. Daily tasks included manually watering 15,000 plants each day. Put together a back-of-the-napkin plan to build an irrigation system and spent the next few weeks building it with some money from the boss. That system is still running 15 years later and does all the work now. I did automate myself out of the job and had to find another eventually. Couple of years later, got my engineering degree. I'm convinced engineers are inherently lazy people that will spend a disproportionate effort to make things easier. That is precisely what engineering is. My brother-in-law spent a whole summer trying to figure out how to fix his sagging deck at the lake, which he could in theory crawl under and jack it up. It would have been a tunneling project. It's a 60 by 60 area, all long 2 by 6 boards. Massive. I sat there long enough with enough beers in me to come up with the idea of just cutting a square out of the sagging area about 3 feet by 3 feet, jacking it up, then re-screwing down the boards. He paints the thing every spring with a roller anyhow, so it's not like the square cut shows up. He thought I was a genius. I was just lazy. We had to hold a thermometer in water in chemistry class. It probably was only a 20-minute experiment, but your arms get tired after a couple minutes and you can't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan or it won't get an accurate reading. So instead of sucking it up and just holding the thermometer, my lab partner built a contraption out of lab books and paper clips to somehow hold the thermometer in the water without it touching bottom. It was the stupidest looking thing you would ever see in a lab class, and our professor even walked over it and said, if it looks stupid, sounds stupid, but it works, then it isn't stupid. My lab partner and I joked that he wasn't talking about the contraption but the intellect of my lab partner. I had a math teacher that actively encouraged his students to be as lazy as possible, defining lazy as actively searching for ways to do as minimal work as possible. His logic was that, the way math is now, it could always be simplified and still work the same, someone just needs to be lazy enough to find that. My favorite math teacher used to say that the best solution is the one you find. I was a paid intern at a large company during one summer back home from college. My work 95% consisted of using SAP, import to Excel, clean data and generate reports, occasionally create some tools someone needed. In the first 2 weeks after getting a hang of my responsibilities, writing all the Excel formulas needed, and basically automating 99% of my work, I was chilling. I went from actually working from 9 to 5 to maybe 1 hour tops a day. Finding, importing, cleaning, and reporting usually took hours, but with all the formulas it took 2 minutes of clicking. I then helped the other cool intern get his shit set up so we could both just chill. We could take 2-hour lunches, paid for by the company, and nobody said anything cause we were just getting so much more done than the other interns. OFC, I helped for special tasks when asked, but those were simple 20 minutes tasks building something in Excel. Overall, was the easiest / stress-less internship of my life. The clerk was asked to bring 145 white papers into the office. He doesn't want to count the papers manually, so he printed 145 blank sheets and took them in. Smart, he used a machine that counts as one of its functions, but not the primary function, to do the counting for him. It's just enough outside of the box that most people wouldn't think to do it at all. Plus, as a bonus, they're all nice and warm. One of my favorite examples is Andy Kim. And I'd like to preface this by saying that I don't think Kim is lazy so much as a genius. Andrew Kim was a singer/songwriter who became famous under the stage name Andy Kim. He achieved success writing songs for bands like the Archies, possibly most notably Sugar. After his success he coasted for a while until his record label dropped him for lack of output. At that point he created his own label and cranked out hits like Rock Me Gently. When they saw this, the big record labels then bought his label under the assumption that they would then profit off of the songs he wrote and performed. He then very shortly stopped writing songs and largely lived off the sale of his label. Work smarter, not harder. When Carl Friedrich Gauss, the famous German mathematician and physicist, was in elementary school, around 1784, his class was assigned the busy work task of adding all the numbers from 1 to 100, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, and so on. This usually kept the class quiet for half an hour or so. 7-year-old Carl was sitting quietly with the correct answer, 5050, while the rest of the class was just starting, so the surprised teacher asked him how he came up with the solution. He replied that he added 1 and 100 and got 101. Then he added 2 and 99, and got 101, 3 plus 98 equals 101, and so on. He realized there was a pattern of 50 pairs of numbers with each pair adding up to 101. And 50 by 101 equals 5050. When I was in college I had a job at an Italian fast food place with a reputation for its breadsticks. They came in frozen and needed a bit to thaw, so we'd take a giant 3 by 4 foot aluminum baking sheet, spread them out in a single layer with no spaces and cover it with a plastic bag, then leave it sit in the walk-in overnight. The next day you'd have to get a pair of tongs and move each stick to a new tray, turning them over, then cover the new tray with a bag and let them sit on racks for a couple of hours before brushing on the garlic butter sauce. This was tedious enough that you'd usually be ready to brush the butter on the first tray as soon as you turned the last tray. I was given this task for the first time one morning and just did not want to deal with it. I realized if I put the second tray upside down on top of the first one then turned it over and took the first tray out, I got exactly the same results. Blew the boss's mind when I did the 3-hour job in about 15 minutes. I was given a $0.05 per hour raise. I was once set to test a certain piece of equipment on a ship. The test involved attaching the unit to a reader, then run loads of command line commands. Then, one would have to make a copy of all the text, copy it into Word and save it as a, real crappy looking, report. There was hundreds of units, and they needed to be tested several times a year. We did about 20 to 30 a day. It would take several weeks to finish. I didn't know coding at the time, but always wanted to learn it. Within 2 months, I had made a program, even with a GUI, to spot faults with ease, instead of having to actually read the reports. The program could read 3 units at a time, and would automatically create a smooth PDF report and save it on our server, named with serial number and date. The job was now to attach 3 units, then wait for about 3 minutes, detach and attach new ones. Basically 30 seconds work, 3 minutes break. I could now test all units in a day, though I would typically spread it out over a couple more days. When I left the company, I left the program on the test computer. I got an email from an ex-colleague a few months later, saying they were using the program on several ships now. There wasn't any manual for the program, of course, but it was so straightforward that it wasn't needed. Back in high school, a lot of kids used to walk through his park to get home or to school. A portion of the path went into the woods because it was just quicker than walking the actual trail. At one point in the walk through the woods, you had to go up this small but tedious hill, nothing major, but it took like 10 seconds of hard work to go up it. You couldn't go around because one side was a small cliff to the creek below and other side of dense trees. One summer, a bunch of us got together and decided to just dig through that hill to make it flat. It took like 14 of us 3 good days to get through it. It was a hard 3 days, but it was definitely worth it. Saved 10 seconds of hill climbing every morning and afternoon, 150 plus days of the year. And it wasn't just us, but hundreds of other kids who took the same party every day. Sometimes you need to put in a lot of work so your future selves can enjoy the easy way out. In Australia, explorers discovered a mountain that was taller than Mount Kosciuszko, which was thought to be the tallest mountain in Australia. Rather than cause confusion by telling everyone a new tallest mountain had been found, they simply named the new mountain Mount Kosciuszko and renamed the original to something else. My boss put my name in for leading a project group shortly after I joined the company. I had no experience whatsoever about project managing, yet he still demanded that I lead the group of 12 people. All way smarter guys, tech background and stuff. These guys are like magicians for me, and with way more time at the company. I'm a business guy who's too dumb for balance sheets, that's why I'm in HR, and because I quite like the field the most. So we started the first meeting. I asked for everyone's plan, experience and ideas, gathered the different pros and cons, cross-checked with the budget we had, put on a time frame with milestones to reach, around 6 months, put in valuable people to consult at different steps. Why did I do that? Because I like organizing stuff and keep everyone on the same page and delegate to-dos. Got promoted because of the success of the project. I asked my boss why he put me in for it since I never done anything like that. He said because I complained in the first week that most of the work has way too wonky structure, no clear guideline, and this could be improved heavily if we just put some time into it. And because I hated talking to others if I had questions and I wouldn't get a clear answer, like, ask 10 people the same question and you get 15 different answers. In the long run this would make us way more efficient and keeps everyone on the same page. All because I hated disorganized work. I don't know if this is a true story, but kind of fits your request. There was a manufacturing plant that made toothpaste. One year for some reason there ended up being an unusually high number of empty boxes being shipped out. So in order to stop that from happening, the head of the company hired a couple engineers to develop a system to catch any empty boxes so they didn't get shipped with the boxes that actually had the toothpaste tubes in them. The engineers developed a system that if the box weighed below a certain amount the system would stop and a worker would have to go remove the box and start everything up again. The person in charge loved the idea and implemented it immediately. And right from the get-go the number of empty boxes shipped dropped to near zero. The head of the company wanted to go see the system in action, so he goes and visits the plant one day and notices a huge fan right by the assembly line. Very confused as it wasn't hot, he asked the plant manager why the fan was there. The plant manager said the workers were tired of stopping what they were doing to remove an empty box, so they just hooked up a fan to blow the empty boxes off the scale before the system recognized it was empty and shut everything off. So laziness led to a more efficient, and cost-effective, plan. Before it was shut down entirely, I was able to privately tour the coal power plant in southeastern Virginia. At one point in the tour, the guide told me to watch out for a cord on the floor. The cord ran to a small, window air conditioning unit that was duct taped to a vent. Supposedly, one day the plant began to overheat, and the plant would have to be shut down in order to repair the malfunction. There are emergency reserves for situations like this, but the plant was overheating faster than they could switch it over. Someone at the plant had just purchased the AC unit, and had it in the back of their vehicle. They ran and grabbed it, plugged it in, and pointed it into one of the vents. The amount of cool air it produced was enough to not only offset the overheating, but to also re-regulate the system, so instead of repairing the issue, they just fixed the AC in place, and let it run continuously until the day the plant shut down. At my last job, a truck suspension shop, we did inventory every December, and it was someone's job to count all the washers and screws of every size. It was my first inventory, and I casually mentioned that they should just weigh 10 screws or washers, then weigh them all and divide the weight to get the count. Everyone looked at me like I had given them the key to the universe. Counting washers and screws went from a day or two, to just an hour. In my teens I started working at a local grocery store and was hired in the deli/bakery department. Every morning one person made salads, 2 people brewed the fresh gallon sweet tea, and 2 people created/prepped the deli counter ready-to-go meals. One week we had a bad flu case hit us and we were severely short on staff. I grabbed a grocery cart and started brewing tea. While it brewed I made the salads. Instead of taking each gallon tea to the other side of the store one at a time, I would place them in the grocery cart and continue brewing and stacking till the cart was full, because frick walking back and forth. Usually by the time it was full I was finished with all morning prep and was able to help the cook make breakfast and prep for lunch. The manager saw this and turned it into my full job in the morning. Unfortunately for my coworkers, most were then let go. I only knew of one who was lucky enough to be moved to another job in the store. I ended up leaving shortly after due to the backlash. TLDR, I did the job equivalent of 5 people by being able to multitask with only a shopping cart and accidentally ruining others' jobs. When I was about 7 to 10 years old, my dad used to pay me to self-sit. Basically, instead of having to get a babysitter on short notice and then pay them like $100, he told me that I would get $30 if I stayed in my room and didn't speak to my older sister for 3 hours. He then told my sister that she was the babysitter and she would get $30 if nothing bad happened. In 1927, my grandfather started his new job at DuPont on a Friday. His first assignment was to separate out a chemical that was suspended in another chemical. He was handed a beaker of the stuff to work on. Since it was late on a Friday afternoon, he did nothing with it, just stuck it on a shelf and went home. He came back Monday morning to discover that the chemical had precipitated out and was sitting on the bottom of the beaker. He showed this to his new boss, who decided my grandfather was a genius. This process, doing nothing to the suspension, became the first of my grandfather's 47 patents. My girlfriend will kill me for this, but duck it. I hate taking a finished toilet paper roll downstairs to throw it out. Me just leaving the empty roll in the bathroom annoys the crap out of my girlfriend, so I developed this strategy. When there was only a few sheets left, I'd start using sheets from a new roll and leave the old roll with sheets still on it. That way, she'd always be the one to finish the roll and have to take the empty one downstairs. I have an herb garden and a planter on my balcony with a water reservoir that needs to be filled. I have an air conditioner in my room with a water reservoir that needs to be emptied. There's an overflow valve on the planter so it can't be overfilled, and they're roughly the same height. I went to the hardware store, bought a long enough tube, and there's now a siphon running between them so that my air conditioner waters my plants and I no longer have to fill or empty any water. I had to take a basic video production class in college. I needed one of the characters' voices in a scene, but the character himself couldn't be in the shot. I didn't want to take the time to record audio separately and try to put it all together when editing. So I told the guy to just go stand behind a column that was in the shot and talk a little louder. It worked perfectly and stunned my professor that I was able to do such a complex task. Then a classmate asked me how I did it. Had to come clean in front of the whole class. My professor was equally stunned at my ability to work smarter, not harder. I got an A. So a company I worked for some years ago launched a new product. There was a very significant price to the sales team that sold the most of this product. It cost approximately $100 at the time. I simply bumped the price of every product we had by $100 and gave the new product to every customer as a thank you. No one was the wiser, and smashed the competition by a massive margin. Our 3-year-old niece is learning how to count. When asked how to get to number 10, instead of counting all the way, she said 5 and 5. We were all blown away at how smart she is to think of it that way. I read several years ago about a timber company which had a college kid working there for summer. They decided to give him one of the lowest skilled jobs, which was to wear waders and stand on the logs that were floating in the collection pool/lake and count them for inventory. The student, being lazy, hired a helicopter to take an aerial shot of the lake, printed the picture, and counted the logs in the picture. That is how they do it from now on, and they have the photo as proof of the count. I have too. My unit once partnered with a jail system that had thousands of incoming inmates per month. Most were only in for a matter of hours or a couple days. The jail asked for help in compiling data on arrestees monthly, mainly demographic stuff. I told my boss the job would take a few days, and I volunteered as long as I could telecommute for that time. He agreed, and when I got home I'd do a pivot table and the whole thing would be done in a matter of minutes. I'd get 3 days vacation at the end of every month. The next was a friend of mine, we'll call him Jeff. Jeff was an engineer in a small town for the power and water company there. Jeff's only job was to walk a dirt path to the water reservoir and read the dials, and document the readings. He made $100K a year to walk the mile in and the mile out every day, minus weekends. He eventually bought a second home in town. When I asked why, he showed me. From the kitchen window in the house, you could see the reservoir gauges. He set up some electric telescope connected to a laptop that gave a live feed that he was able to access from his home. He'd wake up every morning, document the readings, and his day was done. He'd leave town and still be able to do his job. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and share your own lazy person genius ideas in the comments below.